Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Rexis. I'm the school facilities project management supervisor. Really appreciate everybody joining us today for the first of a few different webinars that we're going to be presenting on the 2023 condition assessment, which leads into the condition needs lists as well. Got a lot of information to go over today, so I'm going to try to stay at a fairly high level for today's meeting in order to allow for some questions at the end. There will be more opportunities to ask questions at more regional follow-up meetings to this webinar, in addition to a lot of discussion that we intend to have with each school district at the winter facility planning meetings this year, which we'll discuss a little more in detail a little later on in the presentation. So if you have questions today, please raise your hand in the video and we'll try to get to you. We're going to try to allow for a period of time at the end of the presentation for general questions. And then if you have additional questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to email those questions to the appropriate project manager, and we'll make sure that we respond back to you as soon as possible. As everybody knows, every year the school facilities division of the State Construction Department is required to present facility remediation schedules, which are otherwise known as the need lists or the need lists for both condition and capacity. This presentation is intended to explain how the assessment methodology has changed and how to access and navigate the data collected from the 2023 assessment. So we know it's been a wait for y'all, but we're excited for you to see it. And we're excited to continue to build on this methodology and improve the data that we have that represents your buildings, and to continue tracking improvements and deficiencies as they come online. So to get started, I just wanted a graphic up for everybody so that they understood what the facility condition index score was. We've got that graphic up on the screen, but just to simplify it and summarize it, it's essentially what percentage of your building needs repairs. And that's the nice thing about the methodology difference between the 2016 and the 2023 that we're going to be going into a little deeper dive on later in the presentation. But essentially, it's proactive as opposed to reactive, and it projects what we anticipate in regards to deficiencies coming online throughout the life of your facilities. So we've got some terms to know. Expected useful life is what the industry standard is for that particular component or system. The effective age is how old the assessors believed your equipment to be at the time they did the assessment. If there was some kind of service date posted on that equipment, then they went off of that. If there wasn't, then they tried to guess what how long that equipment has been in service based on the condition it's in. The remaining useful life is the difference between the two. And then you've got deferred and current deficiencies. Deferred deficiencies are deficiencies that currently exist. And then you've also got projected deficiencies as they come online, as you'll see. That's more the proactive portion of the FCI scoring, which is the projected deficiencies. And of course, the facility condition index that we talked about in the last slide. I want to talk for a few minutes about uniform act codes. The consultant that we hired to perform the assessment had a database that it consisted of about 460 roughly uniformat codes. We didn't use all those codes. A lot of them were for specialized buildings and specialized services. But we did feel the need to expand upon the existing codes that we had in order to be a little more detailed in our tracking and projections. So we've added 95 additional codes, and JJ will be making that list available to you soon. We're going to turn on that function in AIM, and we built a crosswalk between the old codes and the new codes so that we didn't lose any of the historical data that we've got for reporting purposes. I would mention that the new codes, I believe, are going to be much more intuitive. Even though there's more of them, I think it'll be easier for the facility managers and the people that are inputting the planned work orders to determine what the appropriate code is just based on the description of the code. But we will be following up with a building condition reference guide that gives a little more description of what each individual code represents in the near future. And one of the other tools that I think will come out of this is that it's going to help simplify some of the high-level cost estimating and budgeting that you do when you submit a planned work order or when you go out for a component or some type of capital project. The 2016 condition assessment methodology was very much similar, except in the regard that there were depreciation values that were calculated into the deferred maintenance because it was a static facility condition index score. In other words, that score pretty much stayed the same until we performed another facility assessment sometime in the future. In addition to that, the old methodology excluded playgrounds, parking lots, and site-related systems as opposed to the new methodology that includes those components. The 2023 condition assessment is more forward-looking, so there is no depreciation calculated into the deficiencies. However, as those components and systems are projected to come to an end of life, those deficiencies come online as we're looking into the future by year. And I think that's going to be a helpful planning tool for a lot of the districts. In addition, instead of just using RS means for the costing of the replacement or repair of components and systems and for the cost replacement value of your buildings, we are now using in 2023, in the 2023 assessment, actual information that was collected and gathered from larger Wyoming state contractors. And we built all the values of the deficiencies based on those numbers that we got back from the contractors, in addition to the building cost replacement value, which I believe aligns very well with some of the bids that we've been receiving since that condition was performed, or that condition assessment was performed. Some of the assessment details, we've got 48,000 individual assets and systems that were assessed statewide. We've got over 50,000 photographs that were captured. Each one of those has a date and time stamp with them. There were over 3.8 million data points that were captured. We've got unit costs, quantities, anticipated remedies for all the deficiencies. And I think you're going to see a lot of that a little later on in the presentation as JJ walks you through the dashboard and what it looks like in AIM so that you're able to access all of this data and give us your feedback on that in the upcoming facility planning meetings. It also has life expectancies for all your current assets and systems as well. So we'd really like for you to get in, take a look at that information. I know it's been a long time coming, and we've been scrubbing through information and trying to set up, operate, or aim in a way that we could bring all that information forward. So appreciate your patience on that. So all the data has been captured, uploaded into the database. We've got the ability to modify life expectancies, deficiencies, unit costs, and FCI scores accordingly. That's why we want everybody to take a look at it, and we want you to contact us if you've got some concerns. We're definitely willing to take a look at that and make modifications as necessary. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well a little later on in the presentation. We also intend to make these scores dynamic. So every year we're going to be adjusting based on the work that's being done to the buildings and the allocations that we're getting for repairs or replacement, as well as the deficiencies that'll come online. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to JJ. He's going to show you the reports that are available and operate at this time. We're going to continue to build on that, just like we're going to continue to build on the accuracy of the assessment data.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeremy Revelle. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Database Programmer for the State Operate System. I'm just going to kind of go through here and show you, all of you, I think the majority of probably everybody out there has a login for the Operate system. These 4 reports that I'm going to show you have been turned on for everyone that are out there. If for some reason you don't see them in your report listing box on your dashboard, just reach out to me. I can get it fixed. If anybody sees this that doesn't have a login to the Operate database and wants one, just send an email to your project manager and we will forward you a URL to fill out a form and get access to the database so you can access all this information. So just to start off here, I'm going to go down, and they're really easy. The 4 reports that we have for right now, they begin with 2023 assess is what they start with. And I'm just going to begin with the 2023 assess buildings by year report. So this is a high-level report. When you run this report, it pulls up a parameter box where you can select your school district from the drop-down list. I also have a field in here. This report can calculate inflation based upon the estimated year of the deficiency, and I set it up so the user can define their own inflation rate. It will default to 3, but if you want to make it 5 or 7 or whatever you want, you can type that in there, and it will automatically recalculate all your totals with that inflation rate. So I'll just go with Albany at the top of the list, and I'm going to leave the default at 3. And when I hit OK, it's going to go out there and it's going to run, and you're going to see over here on the left side, these are all of the buildings that were assessed in Albany County School District number 1. And then along the top here, we have the estimated year of deficiency for certain items within that year, and it totals up that dollar value, including the inflation that you specified. So for instance, right here, Albany 1 Laramie High School, the assessors identified estimated in 2028, there's going to be about, with inflation, $3 million worth of deficiencies at Laramie High School. So this report, you have the ability to drill into it. So if we want to see that $3 million, if you click on that number, it will pull up a list. In this instance, it was really easy. It only shows that one deficiency that's in there, and you're able to drill into that deficiency, and you can actually see the details related to it. So the description, it relates to the carpet or the flooring. Any pictures are available. And then down here, you're able to see what it scored as far as an FCA score goes. These costs right here and the quantity, square footage, all the quantity is right here. These costs right here, please just keep in mind, any costs on these screens include the markups, no inflation. All inflation is calculated in the reports. So whenever you're looking at the screens of the database, just keep that in mind, that it does include regional and global markups, but no inflation. Over on the left, if there were any notes, each one of these sections right here, if they're lit up with a link, that means there's information in those subsections. So right here, you can go into the extra description, and there's a bunch of information that's in there. You can see, you know, if Bureau Veritas had a recommended remedy to remedy that estimated deficiency, that description will be in there. Any notes related to that item, if you go to the notes log on the left, it has the name of the assessor, the date that that assessor reviewed that specific component, and then any contact information that we had for that specific assessor. So I'm just going to go back here. I just happened to click on one. I'm gonna click on another one here that actually has multiple components. So here's a perfect example right here. In 2026, there's an estimate of about $4 million, including inflation with deficiencies. When I drill into that, it pulls up a list of everything that makes up that total of deficiencies. And users of Operate, as you're aware, you can resort. So if we want to resort this from the highest dollar value to the lowest, we can click the header a couple times, and we can see the bulk of that has to do with the play fields and equipment associated with that athletic services. And you can drill into each one of those and any pictures. In some cases, there were multiple pictures that were taken. Over here in the related documents section, if you click on that, if there were any additional photos, it'll say additional photos in the related documents, and you can click this little thumbnail, and it will take you out to the cloud drive, and you will be able to view any additional photos if there were multiple photos taken. Okay, so this right here is the buildings by year, and they're all itemized down, kind of like for you Excel users, it's a lot like a pivot table. If any of you use pivot tables, it totals them down at the bottom. Just recognize, though, these numbers on this report include inflation, and I have a disclaimer down here. Once you click in the totals that show in the columns on the screen, no inflation is included. So that's our first report that's available to everyone right now.
And if I could jump in here for just a minute, I'd like to talk a little bit about this. We believe this is going to be an excellent planning tool for districts to be able to forecast out what your expenditures might be. However, we all know that there are times when things fail prematurely, and there are times when components and systems last longer than what we anticipate them to last. So this is purely just a planning tool. It is in no way a mandate that we expect districts to go in and replace these components and systems unless they need to. I would say if you've got redundancy available and you want to ride the current component until it fails because it's not going to create any problems for you to do that, then that probably would be prudent and certainly is acceptable to us. But if you don't have that redundancy, you know, it might be something that you want to consider when you get close to that end of life so that you're not interrupting your operations or your delivery of the basket of goods. I would add, I think, and this is probably the appropriate place, but you may hear it more than once today too. This is just the anticipated date that we're expecting these things to give up based on life expectancies. But if you see discrepancies or things that happen in or that show up in your data that you don't necessarily agree with or that you don't think are accurate, we're open to having those discussions here. We want to have the best available data to show what the real condition of our buildings are. So we're open to those types of conversations. And if you repaired something since that assessment with maybe some funds other than what we provide, please let us know that so that we can go in and readjust those dates and readjust those deficiencies accordingly.
Okay, let's move on to the second report, 2023 Assess Expenditure Forecast Report. So this is also another report where one district is run at a time. It also calculates inflation if you want to include that. I have it defaulting to 3%. This again is just another high level. This is even more high level. But it shows every system that was assessed out in the entire school district. And then over here, it will itemize any immediate needs as far as dollar values go, short term, which is 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and 11 to 20 years. I did some conditional formatting on this. So the higher the number gets, the darker the color gets. But it just corresponds to every system that was out there in the assessment. And down at the bottom, any of these reports can be exported to Excel or printed or whatever you want to do. Totals everything down at the bottom here, just to give you something forward looking to, to be able to identify, 5 years out, what possibly could be coming. And as John said, everything's an estimate as far as when these deficiencies will come due. But this is another high level report, which is the expenditure forecast report.
Another thing I think we should probably mention is that when you're seeing these dollar values for these deficiencies, that is for replacing the existing system as it is or repairing the existing system as it is. So there's no consideration for adjacent components. Now, if you're going in and you've got a VAV replacement project, the dollar value that you're going to see here is only for the replacement of those VAVs. We all know that a lot of the times the ceiling grid is probably old and dated, and it's economical to replace that ceiling grid at that point in time because removal and reinstallation of the existing ceiling grid is almost the cost of new. And we also know that in some cases the carpet's old and worn, and it just makes sense to do that because it saves you money on protection and cover when you're in doing the work. I just can't emphasize enough that these numbers don't reflect any of that additional work that needs to be done. So if you're using these for your cost estimating, please consider that and make adjustments to that accordingly.
Okay, the third report right here is the FCI analysis report. So here's where you'll be able to start looking at your individual buildings that were included in the assessment. So you'll select your school district from the first parameter. Everything is set up as a cascading parameter, so it will filter down to your buildings and you can drop the second list. And for this example, I'll just go into Laramie High School over in Albany 1. Again, this has the ability to calculate inflation for you. So if you want to put your own custom rate in there, I'm going to leave it at 3 and hit OK. That goes out and runs the individual FCI analysis report for Laramie High School. At the top of every report, you'll be able to see the cost per square foot that was identified by Bureau Veritas, the assessors, as far as the cost per square foot associated with the gross square footage of the building gives the estimated replacement value of that building, the year built. And depending on what number you put in as far as inflation goes, it will calculate an average per year of what it estimates you'll need average per year to remedy the deficiencies within that building. So that's all included up in the header. When we get down to the FCI analysis graph, this is a double y-axis graph right here, where you can look on the first y-axis. We have the estimated costs that are escalated within inflation, and on the second y-axis, we've got the FCI score. So the bars that are in blue represent the estimated deficiencies for that year. And if you float over any of these bars or the red line, it will display the exact number associated with that corresponding graphic within the graph. The gray bar represents if no work is done in a year, it essentially stacks on any previous work that was not done, and you can see how the cost will escalate, as well as the FCI score of that building. Do you want to contribute anything to it?
Well, I think just so that everybody knows, we used to go off, I believe, a 0.6 for replacement of buildings. I think we saw, in general, most FCI scores drop with this methodology. So we also lowered the bar to a 0.30, which flags for a Mercer study. Once you've reached that point, projecting 5 years out from the current year, when you hit a 0.30, then we go in and we do a Mercer study. Now, a Mercer study doesn't automatically mean a new replacement. It could be anything from do nothing to a new replacement, depending on, what the study drives. I mean, it could be maybe 5 years from now, you've got a whole bunch of major maintenance that you need to do in order to bring your building back to a good condition. And then nothing needs to be done in your building for the next 10 years after that. Or quite possibly you might have a building that needs the same amount of work done in 5 years, but in years 7 or 8 or 9, there's an additional large amount of work that needs to be done. And that's when your Mercer consultant's going to have to make a determination where the most return on the investment is, and what benefits the state and the district the most. So each individual project is going to be unique, and that's why we're performing those studies to drive out what needs to occur. But it could be anything from just use your major maintenance and take care of the issues, all the way up to a full replacement.
So as we progress down this report, we have the FCI analysis table, which is essentially the same information that's in the graph, but it starts breaking it out by year and totaling the estimated deficiencies with inflation. I put some conditional formatting on the so as the FCI score grows, it'll go, from orange to red, and you'll see it get darker as the condition of the building would worsen. And then we get down to the assets and observations. So this is the very bottom right here by year. It's grouped by year. So in 2023, these numbers right here do not include any inflation right here, but it groups by year those estimated deficiencies, and it gives you the image over on the left. If you want to you can click on any of these pictures and get the full-sized image in there.
Find a roof for me.
Find a roof. Let's see if we can find a roof. So if we go down here, here's 2020.
That one's good, the parking lot.
Do the parking lot right here?
Sorry for interrupting, JJ. I wanted to jump in here because two of the major points of contention that we had were on parking lots and roofs. As you know, in the previous biennial budget, we didn't get the appropriation we were looking for to perform this assessment. It had been some years since the 2016. Everybody was in a rush. We didn't want to put it off for another year waiting for good weather. So we went ahead and performed the assessment. There were some parking lots that were covered with snow, and there were some roofs that were covered with snow. In those particular instances, the consulting team relied a lot on the districts to provide them with as much information as possible in order for them to make a determination of what that condition of that component was. And I think the roofs were very similar. We knew on the front end of things that for their insurance company wouldn't allow them to get on a pitched roof, and they also wouldn't allow them to get on a flat roof if there was inclement weather. So some of those things they did the best they could with the information that was provided by the district. And I would say that there was a very wide range of participation that we saw across the state from different districts. Some did a great job of filling out their pre-survey questionnaires and walking with their consultants, and others we just didn't see a whole lot of feedback or input from the districts. But that doesn't mean that it's too late. I think that as I was mentioning earlier, one of the nice things about this methodology is that it's dynamic. We've got the ability to go in and verify things and make adjustments as necessary. So keep that in mind as you're looking through this. Some systems that are that aren't easily or readily or easily observed may need some additional study. In fact, I think that was probably mentioned at least in several instances across the state where there might be some kind of structural issue going on. It wasn't really a determination that our consultant could make at that point in time. So for the deficiency on that, they did point out that there is an additional study, and the amount of the deficiency is what they believe the cost of that study would be. So we're trying to work with districts to get some of that cleared up as well.
Hey, Jeremy and John.
Yes.
Does the district have the ability to upload pictures into this database as well?
I think if the district would like some pictures, if they could send them to JJ and I, we can make sure that those get added. We're probably going to need a pretty good description so that we know where to tie those pictures, what asset to tie those pictures to, but we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this will go all the way down. Just keep in mind on these reports, when you run, we can see we're looking at page 1 of 4. So when you get to the bottom, don't think that's it. The page navigation button's up here in the top right. You can go on to page 2. All your images are right there. So that's the FCI analysis. This gives you the ability to drill down into your individual buildings. As far as that, but everything is hyperlinked. So if you actually want to go into this asset, I did put the FCA condition score right there, so you'll know the same as it's always been before, 1 through 5. 1 is being the worst, 5 being the best. If you see a 6 just means non-applicable. So for whatever reason, the assessors it was NA for the score. Maybe it didn't apply to the building or something like that. So that's the FCI analysis report. The last report is the replacement reserve report. This is also a report. No inflation is calculated on this, but we can go out and select your school district and you can drill down into your individual building. I'm just going to stay with Laramie High School here. And what this does right here is this will just total up. So for Laramie High School, it will total up by year the estimated deficiencies as far as out as it will go. And then when you come down below that, here are those same individual assets, the uniform code associated with them, the description. And here's where we include a lot of the data that was included over on this screen right here, as far as, you know, the estimated physical life, the estimated remaining life of that equipment is all right here. So we can see the estimated useful life of each piece of equipment there, the estimated age, remaining useful life, the quantity associated with it. So if it's each or square feet or linear feet, if you see LS, that stands for lump sum. But if you drill into those assets, all those descriptions are there. And then it kind of just plots out those deficiencies in the years that they're in. But this report kind of gives you some more details of those individual systems.
One thing I think I should add to this too is when you're looking at those costs and quantities, that's pretty important. In the notes, there may be a written suggested remedy. That doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be the remedy that the district chooses. But keep in mind the dollar value of the deficiency is based on the suggested remedy. And so it's important to take a close look at that, because you might have a handrail in 2 different locations on your building, and one remedy might just be a refinish of the existing rail, whereas the other location, you know, might be a northern exposure that doesn't see a lot of sun, that's had a lot of wear and tear, and it could potentially be a replacement in that location. So I think it's important to take a look at your unit cost, to look at your unit of measure, and from that you can kind of derive what the remedy was intended to be if it wasn't specifically called out. And again, that doesn't mean that that's what we're mandating. I think I should probably add that, and I think I mentioned this before, but I'm not sure if everybody caught it, but it's replacing like for like. So the example that I like to use on this is a coal-fired boiler. Well, we all know that nobody's going to go out there and replace an old coal-fired boiler in their building with a new coal-fired boiler. So if you plan on putting a high efficiency boiler in, you're probably going to have to make some modifications to your estimate on cost when you submit your planned work order for doing that.
Okay, so these are the 4 reports. Like I said, I think a lot of people in here are AIM Operate. They changed the name. Sometimes we still call it AIM. I try to stick to the new name of the software, but in your report listing box out on, these have been published to everybody. If you do have access to AIM, like I said, and you do not see the reports in your report listing box, please reach out to myself or your project manager and we'll fix it for you so they're showing up. And then anybody in here, if you're not an Operate user but you want to be able to get in and see all of this, reach out to myself or your project manager and we'll send you a link to get you a username and a password so you can log in and look at the information. Hey Troy, you got your hand up? What's up?
Yeah, hi JJ, thank you. How does the 680 report each year impact this, if it does?
Well, that's actually a good question.
Say again.
Well, Troy just asked, how does the 680 report? And Troy, it doesn't affect the 680 at all, but the money that is being spent on those, John, I'll let you.
So what we intend to do is when we're making improvements or we're repairing deficiencies, once that work is complete, or actually once there's been funding allocated for that work, it's our intention to eliminate that deficiency. That's going to, and it's going to lower your FCI score, right, as time goes on. But we're not necessarily applying the credit for the cost of the work as much as we are eliminating the deficiencies, because I would say in general, all of the estimated costs in here are for the repair work only. So when we go in and say, if the condition assessment, which we've used for the past couple of years to determine our component level projects, warrants a component level project, we take that base dollar value as the cost of the work, and then we plug it into our budget worksheets, and we escalate that cost to account for design fees, contingencies, soft costs. So the actual cost of the work is more than what they're showing here, but for the purpose of keeping apples to apples, we wanted to make sure that we were only estimating the cost of the actual repair, not any of the soft costs, not any of the design fees. So it would kind of skew the data if we were to apply what we expended on the project towards the total deficiencies of the district. But we do want to capture which deficiencies we're eliminating. So we're going to stay with those values as laid out by Bureau Veritas, but as remedies are realized, we're going to be taking those deficiencies offline. And then we'll reset the clock. So if you get a component level project for a roof replacement, once that component funding hits, we're going to go in and we're going to reset the life cycle on that roof. And that's going to project that out probably another 20 years. And it's going to show your roof being due 20 years from the completion date of the new installation.
Troy, as far as the 680, I mean, the 680 is going to continue as usual, the way that we do it. That was a great question though.
It is. And I think not only capital construction and component level funding eliminates deficiencies, obviously major maintenance does as well. So we're going to be working on capturing those planned work orders and adjusting the deficiencies accordingly also. And then every year, as those projections are realized, when those things come online, you're going to see additional deficiencies for your district too. So those scores are going to fluctuate up and down for pretty much every building out there.
So I think now is probably a perfect time for a question.
Yeah.
That's here. Yeah.
Let's see.
You see your codes, how many codes?
Yeah, I want to touch back on the Uniform Act codes a little bit. Probably in the coming weeks, we're going to make the switch over to that, and you'll notice the difference from one day to the next, probably, where there's a substantial amount of more codes being listed. I think that if you have any trouble trying to make a determination of what code applies to the work that you need to do, it would be best if you would contact your project manager. But I think in general, you're going to find that the new Uniform Act codes are much more specific to the systems, and that it's more intuitive and easier for you to make a determination of what the appropriate code is. The old Uniform Act codes that we were using were a little more general in nature, and when we had the building reference guide, we had to convey the intent of what each code was supposed to represent, and then people would have to figure out exactly where some of their systems fit within that. But I think you'll still see similar groupings in that all the mechanical codes are pretty much together, all the electrical codes are pretty much together. So I don't think it'll be an exhaustive effort for you to find exactly what you're looking for. But I would probably encourage you to download the codes out of Operate and put them in an Excel spreadsheet, just because it's a little easier to maneuver. And that's something that you can save right on your desktop to look at. And again, you know, your project managers will be working with you to make sure that all that information is captured appropriately when they're given their approvals to the planned work orders. Any questions? So I'm not seeing any, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to shut everything down right away. I just, I want to reiterate that our plan is to follow up this meeting with smaller regional meetings to make it a little easier for everybody to get involved and to get their questions answered. But also, we wanted to get this out and to give a brief tutorial so that everybody would have a chance to digest some of this information, collect their thoughts, and then put their questions together, because we know that they're going to come. But we're here and willing to be as involved as we need to be to make this transition as seamless as possible.
Really quick, in the chat of this meeting, everybody should be able to see if they got a notification. I included the URL out to the AIM user request form. So if you do not have a login for AIM or Operate, if you fill that form out, we'll send your information down here. We'll get you set up and email you your credentials. So that's the link to get access if you do not have access already.
And then finally, I think this is a good segue for us to have a brief discussion about district participation as we move forward. The Director McComey has spoken at a couple public meetings now about his desire to get a facility planning group up and running. I think it's our intention to have representatives from different regions across the state participate in that facility planning group to help us move forward into the future, not only to take a look at maybe some of the life cycles that are in the assessment data or the unit costs that are in the assessment data, but also to get back involved with things like component prioritization and just really to partner with the department in order to continue to move forward into the future and try to provide the best service that we can to all the districts across the state. So there'll be more to come on that in the near future. Like I said, we'd like to get that group back together because we got a lot of things that we want to talk about and discuss outside of the assessment, and we'd like district input and feedback on.
Yeah, it's Del McComey. So a couple of things that I'd like to kind of emphasize. John touched on them briefly, but so one of the things we'd like you to do is get in here and play around with the data. Make sure you kind of understand how it works. Get a hold of your project manager if you have any questions. John and JJ can answer questions also. We do want to, in the future, as JJ said, probably add some more pages to the information that you can access. We're probably going to not add those type of pages on an individual district basis. But again, with the facilities group, I'd like to have a dialogue. If there's something that, you know, a number of the districts or the vast majority of districts say, hey, we'd like to see our data in this format or whatever it may be, then we'll work on trying to put something together to add some more information and perhaps a little better friendly user access mode for the districts. The other thing, and John touched on this, this is somewhat dynamic. We'll be taking things offline, adding things online into the assessment as we move forward in the future. And there were a number of, not all the districts have them, but there was a number of buildings where it was noted that future study is needed. So for the dollar value, it might just be a $25,000, $50,000 number in there, and it says there was, say, a structural deficiency was noted, and further study is needed to actually determine what the remedy may be and maybe what that cost is. And so, rather than the districts using their major maintenance money to go out and do that, we're going to have funds available, and we'll be working with the districts to start the consultant reviews on those. And then again, we'll add that in because it might be just a placeholder placed in under that item for the dollars for the consultant. So it might be, you know, a $200,000, $300,000 fix where it's actually showing right now maybe $10,000, $20,000, but that's for the consultant to go look at that. Again, we'll be working with you all to do that, and we'll provide the funds to hire the consultants to go ahead and do that. The other thing is, again, go in and look at the data, see what's going on, and we want to tie this also to the upcoming facility annual meeting. Tentative prior to this, there wasn't going to be a meeting this year. We're now scheduling those meetings in the October, November, perhaps early December timeframe with the districts. So as you go through and look at this information compared to what you're seeing with your buildings, if anything sticks out that you think is incorrect or needs some additional information, we'd like that feedback at least in those annual plans, annual meetings, if not earlier, so we can again have that discussion. And then if we need to have a consultant come out and look at it, us come out and look at it, or PM with you to look at it and try and correct any of those deficiencies that we feel are probably not correct, then we want to know that and get started on that. So again, it'll give you a few months to start kind of playing with the system, see what's out there, and get us some feedback. Okay. Okay, we do have a question. It says, will districts be able to nominate members for the facility group? Yes. And as a matter of fact, I'd like to have a member from every district if we could. Kind of historically, there's been probably in the upper teens to low 20s had attended that facility group meeting. And so, yes, we'd like to have as much involvement from the districts as possible to be able to help, because as John said, I have a lot of things that I'd like to get district input on. One of those is right now we're going to be working on our every 4 years we're required to go in and update the adequacy standards and our design standards. I'd like, as we're working through that process, to have the facility group work with us. If there's something within, again, the data that we can provide some additional reporting, I'd like to see that happen. So I've got, I don't want to overwork your folks in the district, but I do have about 4 or 5 things I'd like to have the facility managers group involved in. Again, how are we going to look at component project funding in the future? What's that look like? So,
You want me to answer Terry's? I can.
okay, go ahead.
And another question we got is, will other state agencies be involved in the 24-25 as we did in 2015? And I think what they're asking is will there be a similar database and assessment for state agencies in addition to the school districts? And from my understanding, we're asking for funding to do that now.
We have the funding to do that. We're looking at taking it out of the 10% major maintenance funds. And so our plan right now is to try and have the RFP out on the street at about the end of the year, so that we can do the selection process, and then have the, whoever is selected to do the study, be able to start, with the state agencies, about the 15th of April. So we have good weather, lessons learned, good weather, to get the assessment done. And we're looking at, a very, very similar, we'd like it to look the same as what we have on the school side assessment, forward looking. And so, with that, it will go into the AIM database, just like you're used to using right now. And, so it'll be for the state folks that are on here. I think maybe community colleges, maybe UW, we've invited a lot of people, to this. It'll look very similar to what you just saw, what we have for the school side.
Mr. Decker, do you have a question?
Yes, this is for Director McComey. It's been about 3 years since I've seen JJ, and it looks to me like he may have gray hair now. Could you confirm that, please?
He didn't until we started working on the database for this. And I think by the time we're done, he'll be bald. So.
Thanks, Troy.
Mr. Keys?
Hey, thank you, Director McComey. Thank you for that answer. I'm the one who raised that question. WDOC do have that database that we did back in 2015, some follow-ups in 2018. So we do use it. Again, I know we was invited in on this today. So thank you for the presentation. We're already up and running and using similar. We are in the midst too of updating our internal AIMS database and all. So we had a meeting, a staff that we have every morning with our maintenance managers and staff. But they extended it to also to the facility force people working with us out of Texas. So we're all eager and up and running. So that's why I asked the question, are we going to be doing similar new? So maybe we could double up and put it in our own database as well this year. So if April is kind of the target date that you all maybe going to looking at starting, and if DOC is to participate, we're fully ready and on board with it, and we just have a little heads up, and we'll make accommodations. Because with our facilities getting in and doing these assessments, there is a lot of background checks and other components have to go in for us, Director McComey, unlike maybe some of the other facilities. So that's just an added step that we would have to do for DOC properties. And I just wanted to put that on the table up front going into this. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Terry.
All right, any other questions today? Well, with that, again, I want to thank everybody for participating today. We're excited about this. We're expecting some growing pains, but we're willing to do what we need to do to ensure that we've got the best information available. So we look forward to working with everybody in the future, both near and far. And with that, I'll go ahead and close out the meeting. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, John.